Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, we do all things construction, and in this series of videos, we're helping to try to get you to understand how to read plans, blueprints, whatever you want to call them these days, construction drawings. And this is part of a series based on my textbook, but you don't need the textbook to learn here. And we're going to be looking at symbols, abbreviations, and hatchings. How do we read them and interpret them on drawings? Sometimes there's a lot of confusion as to what you're looking at. And there's some certain tips and techniques that I think will help you in your journey at being really, really good at reading construction drawings. I'm a professor of construction management, and this has been my career and life for many years. I grew up in a family-run construction business, did a couple of apprenticeships in carpentry and brick and stone masonry, and have been a professor in construction management for longer than I'd like to say. All right, let's get started. So we're going to look at abbreviations. It's very difficult sometimes with all the acronyms and abbreviations that people use. I was just looking at this document I got from somebody from my college, and it was loaded with all these abbreviations. And to be honest, I've been there forever and I don't know what half the abbreviations are. So this is challenging. But the reason it's like that is you don't want to start writing a whole bunch of stuff on a set of drawings, because then you can't see the actual walls, you can't see the actual stairs, you can't see the actual cabinets. And so designers, architects, they try to minimize the amount that they place on it so it doesn't crowd it out, that you don't really see what it is you're building. So that's why it's there. So that's the first thing that you've got to kind of understand. Same with hatchings. We want to kind of be able to glance at something and understand, is this a concrete wall? Is this a piece of dimensional lumber? What is this that we're looking at? And it's a little bit of a shortcut. It doesn't tell the whole story, but it gives you a really good indication from that perspective of what you're looking at. And symbols, well, I want to know what I'm quickly, if I'm basically an electrician, I want to know where the outlets are. I want to know where the lights are. I want to know how it's going to be switched. I want to know if there's anything unique about it, that kind of information. Some things are pretty obvious, like, you kind of know what a toilet looks like, and when you see it on plan view, oh, okay, so that's in a washroom, that's going to be where the toilet is. But some things are less so, especially like electrical symbols and things of that nature. So there's always going to be a legend. There's always going to be a legend on your set of drawings. Wow. I don't like to use the word always. There's generally going to be a legend, and that's the first place you should look. I always check there first, because that's how that designer plans to use their symbols and abbreviations and hatchings on this drawing, depending to the extent that they show it. Like, this is a really good one in the sense that it has a whole bunch of abbreviations listed here. And so if you see this on the drawing, you can just look at it. Oh, okay. Drop beam by floor manufacturer. Like, that one's probably one that's a little bit more unique to this particular designer. There's ones like DJ that's pretty universal, double joist, TJ, triple joist, LVL, laminated veneer lumber. So there's a lot of ones that are pretty universal. Top of steel is pretty universal. Undersized steel, I don't see as much, but there's a lot that I know when I look there, that's going to be what it is, and that tells me what's correct. Same thing over here, you've got symbols. Now, I'm going to show you some symbols that are kind of like from what we call our CSA standard, but like there's no symbol police out there, and there's no abbreviation police. But any designer, architect, they want to make it as fluid and understandable as possible. So they're pretty universal, but if there's differences, this would be the first place I would look, because you would see it. But these ones, like, these are outlets, right? They're very universal. Something like this, I'll show you later on, 42 inches high. Well, it's telling you the height of the outlet from the floor. So whatever that amount is, that's what it is above the floor. Otherwise, this says 300 millimeters high. I'm in Canada, so basically 12 inches off the floor. So it's basically just saying, if it doesn't say anything, you're to place it 12 inches off the floor. And that's for the electrician. So there's those kind of things that are pretty easy to communicate. Stuff here like heavy duty outlet. So they're sort of establishing the type of heavy duty outlet. There's different symbols that you may see on like condominium buildings, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, where they might not use that. They might use that symbol for other things. But in these set of drawings, they're just using a heavy duty outlet. That's like a 220, 240 volt. So that would be like for a dryer or a stove. And here they're even putting a sort of a specialized sort of symbol for heavy duty outlet rough-in. All right, so that's a rough-in for an EV vehicle, right? Electric vehicle. EVC, heavy duty outlet, so basically they're actually installing it. So likely in this case, if they put that, they're basically running maybe a conduit, they're running an outlet box, they're not fully putting it in the system. Here they're actually putting it in the system, right? And there's usually an option that you would pay if you purchase the house that would distinguish, okay, well, pay an extra, whatever, $800, whatever it is, and you get the full thing installed. Don't pay it, but it's roughed in. Then you have it for future use. And the way building codes are changing, there'll be probably certain things that are standard on these as they become more widespread, so that basically it's not a choice, it's the builder has to do it to meet code requirements. Depends where you are, it may already be there. So that's something that's fluid there. But you see these symbols like floor drain, hose bib, so for your hose, right, where you're gonna plug in your hose. Usually on a regular production house, and if I say production house, I just mean that one that there's multiples being built in a subdivision as opposed to a custom home. Usually you'll find a hose bib, one in the garage and maybe one at the back of the house, right? Custom home, you could see them all over the place, right? You could even have a separate set of drawings for a sprinkler plan, etc. So we have those things here. Pot light, right? If it's got pot lights, it would just show that with a P. This would be a regular light fixture. This would be a light fixture with a pull chain. Usually you'd find it in a basement. Smoke alarm system. And interconnected means that they're wired so that they all go off if one goes off. Again, these are just basically symbols that are helping to shortcut things so that you know what you're looking at. Hatchings. There's different hatchings, but there's also, these are very, I would say, specific to this particular legend and this particular designer, but there's also a lot of standard hatchings that they also use. Like this one here where they've got built up floor, very common, it's to show brick too. If you're looking at a plan view, it'll indicate brick, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. All right, so basically we have a lot of stuff we're putting in a small area. It helps to make it easier when we use abbreviations, when we use hatchings, and we use symbols. That's the goal. And so there are lots of hatchings out there. Now we live in the world of AI. You know what? Like I've done this with my students lots of times. If there's an abbreviation that I don't get or I don't understand, and it's not in the legend, and because I do get them, right? Like I look at tons and tons of drawings, but there's a lot of things that surprise me. And so if I don't know, and I've looked at the legend, then I'm going to also maybe try a ChatGPT, a Gemini, a Claude, whatever it is, your AI tool of choice. I'm going to say, all right, I'm looking at a residential set of construction drawings. The abbreviation is showing me RWL. What is it? And it'll usually come up, it'll say something like rainwater leader, right? And it may give you a link to what exactly a rainwater leader, or it might explain, well, it's basically a downspout. Sometimes it might say DS instead of RWL. So that can be helpful in trying to narrow down what it is for you. You have to be careful because it could tell you something that's in a completely different industry. That's why you got to be careful how you prompt it too. So I keep that in mind if you're using those AI tools that way. But they get better all the time. And the hatchings and symbols I just kind of went through with all of that, like the ability to just sort of quickly look at something and say, oh, okay, if I'm seeing this like in a garage or just outside the garage, then I know what it is, right? Like that's also where is it being placed helps. Like I know if I see this in a kitchen right away, I'm going, okay, so that's where the stove is. And usually there'll be an abbreviation for a stove like S. Right? So it's usually pretty straightforward in what you're looking at when you see it into relation of where it is. That's what you have to also be careful about with abbreviations is like one abbreviation could mean 4 or 5 different things. Like R. You could see R. Okay, R could be showing you like a radius of a circle. If you do concrete sidewalks and things, well, that could be the radius for the curb. You know, if you're into roads. Right? And it might have like an arrow and it might say 3 feet. Okay, I know that radius of the curve of the sidewalk is 3 feet, R. Or R could be up 10R. That's 10 risers on a stair. Well, I know if it's pointing to a stairs, it's talking about risers. R. R could be R value, the resistance to heat loss of insulating materials. That's another use of R. R, range, could be for like a stove. So I've seen it used, one letter or abbreviation used in 4 or 5 different contexts, but all of them it's like, well, it's pointing to a hatching that is like a standard insulation hatching. That gives me a clue that, oh, it's talking about the R value of the insulation. So it's all in relation and context of what you're looking at, and you have to build up a little bit of experience. Like I said, this is usually brick masonry in plan view. So this is like plan view. This is what you'd see it in elevation. And maybe if they show a section or a detailed drawing, that's going to be the next video I'll do, which is on detailed drawings, looking at detailed drawings. And the detailed drawings we look at, they'll be filled with different hatchings and abbreviations and symbols. So that's another aspect that we'll look at in an upcoming video. Cut stone masonry. Well, it's showing a lot of dots, so I get it. I probably wouldn't necessarily know that it is, whether it's prefabricated, like a prefabricated masonry material or concrete material, or whether it's actual real stone just by that. Then I'd be looking for a leader line and a description. But I would be looking at that and I'd be saying it's some sort of either precast concrete, some sort of precast stone, or real natural stone. I just don't know yet. I'll just look for the abbreviation, or I'll look in the construction notes or specifications for that. So like, even though it's, because I don't really see a big, difference in some of these, but it does give me a clue. Like I can quickly get a good sense of what it is. And then I'm looking for more detail. Usually concrete shows a little bit more with aggregates when you see it. So it's usually got a little bit more with the aggregates in it, as opposed to masonry. Masonry, just think brick or block is a kind of a broad unit for masonry. And then reinforced concrete, I should, if I'm looking at a section detail, and it's got steel in it, I should actually see the steel. So basically I've got some rebars here, reinforcing steel, and some stirrups that are holding it in place. Concrete block very often will show an X pattern, but I wouldn't count on it always, but very often I do see that. A ceramic tile, we don't look at it so much other than like plan view. Like in plan view, ceramic tile looks like ceramic tiles. And then what's the logic? Where is it showing it? It's showing as I walk in the front door. It's showing it around the kitchen, right? Like, where would it likely be? And then it kind of makes sense where it is. Wood framing material. This is like if I cut through dimensional lumber and I'm looking at the end of it. So if I see the end of a piece of wood, so usually in detail drawings you see this a lot, where it might show the rim joist, right, that you've cut through it. It might show the sill plate with an X, that basically, okay, this is basically the sill plate. It's sitting on a concrete wall. It's got a rim joist, and then you just got a regular joist. It shows this for alteration work in these standards, but usually I find like an alteration is just remodeling or renovations, right? Depending where you're from, US, it's usually remodeling. Here, it's usually renovations. But usually we show it with a dash line to say, this is existing to be removed, right? So to be removed, like a hidden line, but in that case, it's not a hidden line. It's just saying this part to be removed. I'd look for a leader line that would point to it and say wall removed or something of that nature. This is very normal. Like I see this everywhere for rigid insulation. So basically that just means it's styrofoam. It's not telling you what type of styrofoam. There's quite a few different types. Like there's extruded polystyrene, there's expanded polystyrene. Think of expanded like the old coffee cups. It kind of like, if you break it up, it just brings them into little beads that look like snow. The extruded is much more dense. It actually has a higher resistance to heat loss, a little bit better from that perspective, but both are used. But I look at that and I say, okay, styrofoam. I look at this, I say, okay, batt insulation. Batt usually is friction fit. It fits between the studs, fits between the joists, if that's what you're doing. It could be made out of fiberglass. It could be made out of rock wool. Rock wool is really a spun, basically volcanic rock that is basically into threads, very fireproof kind of material, whereas fiberglass is glass threads. Very itchy stuff if you don't have yourself properly protected when you're installing that. Structural steel looks like basically like if you're looking at a cut through of it, it looks like it is. So this would typically be a wide flange I-beam. We'd usually say like a a W in front of it if we were pointing to it. But if we're looking at it visually, C-channel, angle iron, a T-bar or T-section, and then we have our lintels, which basically are our steel angle irons. That would support the brick or masonry, stone, over windows and door openings, block. And this is for ground, grade, right? So just think of it as that. And you see how it's like on a 45-degree angle going this way and that way? I also see it where it's vertical and horizontal, but if you see it like where it should be ground and it makes sense, that's what it's referring to. Gravel looks like gravel. Bedrock kind of has this kind of symbol to it, but again, I would be looking for hatchings, anything that would show that. I never really see this one, so I don't worry about it too much. Here's like a section detail through a wall, right? So it's got, I like this because it's got a whole pile of hatchings. And so basically here, typically you're not going to be that lucky that it looks exactly like a brick with mortar joints. Usually all you're going to see is the angled lines. That would be indicating to me it's a masonry wall, and then I would want to look, here's a leader line, it's saying it's brick, so I know it's brick. This way it'd be hard not to know it's brick, but usually it wouldn't show like that it's got recessed joints and that sort of thing. This is an airspace, so it's basically, that's a building code requirement when you're using a brick veneer. So if any moisture gets down, it can travel down, and then there's going to be weep holes where it vents out. We'll look at that in further videos that I'm going to have in this series because I have whole chapters on framing in the book. We're just looking at details right now. Rigid insulation on the outside, very good, provides a thermal break to the wall from an insulating point of view. We have building paper on the outside of that. All kinds of different products for building paper. You'd have to look at the specifications or the construction notes. You could have black tar paper. You could have like a Tyvek spun bonded olefin. You could have a peel and stick, like a blue skin type material that's rated as a air barrier or weather barrier on the outside. And then basically this is showing bad insulation. That's the symbol. And then we have our air vapor barrier. We'll look at that when we talk about a little bit on the building science and building envelope down in another series. But basically that's generally a 6 mil polyethylene film that's put around the inside, the warm side of the wall. Now I'm talking from Toronto, Canada. So Toronto, Canada, northern United States, like across Canada, we get like really cold winters. We get hot summers, but the winters tend to be colder than the summers are hot. It depends where you are. There may be in southern climates differences in your code requirements. So, but this is just showing potential hatching for that. So that's the only reason I'm pointing out. The little dots, that's like for gypsum, drywall, right? So when we think about, sometimes referred to as gypsum board, but we tend to call it drywall. And you're getting just at a glimpse, you know, when you get used to drawings, I kind of know what I'm looking at. Like maybe you don't right now, but you will eventually add the more drawings that you look at. Symbols, lots of symbols for different things. So lots of symbols for different things, for switches, for outlets, for pot lights, right? You name it. If I'm an electrician, I rely on what kind of symbols that it might show. These are fairly standard symbols, but there's ones that here we don't even use. We, instead of the R, we kind of use this one instead, all right? So in the drawings that I'm showing you, but in your drawings, maybe it does. Maybe it does. So it just depends on what it is. Just the extra line represents an extra conductor. So you would have basically two hots bringing in either 110, 120 volts, which would be 220 or 240 volts to your stove. And so if it's a stove too, the electrician knows it's a stove and they know the proper wire gauge to use in running the wire that meets your electrical code. All of those things from the people with the expertise in those areas, it signals to them what they have to do. Whereas if it's just a duplex receptacle, it's just referring to this, right? That's a duplex receptacle. You could say a duplex outlet, the same thing. People often like to say the plugs, but the plugs is the part that you put in. But basically, this is what it is, right? And so that's what you can just picture in your mind. Some things, like I've never seen a clock outlet in years and years. They still keep the symbol, but I mean, we just use batteries typically and things like that. Junction box, that would be basically a box that needs to be accessible. That's where wires are joining up. So you can't cover that over. because sometimes those wires, they heat over time and they might loosen, so electricians should be able to access them. So here's basically an electrical plan. And in this electrical plan here, we can see a number of things. We can see basically this is a great room. There's the outlets, right? Those are duplex receptacles. So each one's like what I was just showing you. This basically WP means it's a weatherproof outlet. So it's outside, right? So it's going to have a cover. This is a hose bib. So that's where you're going to be able to put your hose. This is showing you more outlets in the kitchen. There's a little number there. I'd have to zoom in, but it would tell me how high that outlet is. Basically, it's got to be high enough to be above the counter, right? So when I see this and there's a little bit of, looks like writing, if I zoomed in, it would tell me 42 inches above the floor as an example. So you'd want to make sure it's whatever height it says. This one's not telling me, but I know it's in an island. So if I'm an electrician, I'm going to be finding out. I want to see the shop drawings for the kitchen, and I want to know exactly where you want this outlet, right? So it's those kind of things that go on drawings. Shop drawings are the manufacturer's drawings of how they're making these cabinets, because clients go in and they do a bunch of selections on the cabinets, and they may not look exactly like this. There may be some deviations to what you see on the original architectural plans. So you might see, you'll hear shop drawings like, where's the floor, where's the I-joist drawings for the floor. In residential, we kind of sometimes just say things a little bit easier. In commercial, in high-rise buildings, in civil projects, we would say, where's the shop drawings for this, right? So it's manufacturer's description of how it has to be done. So here we have a light, right? Light fixture, and that's a switch. So the S, it looks like a dollar sign or something there, but it's only got one line running through it. It just means the S, and this is the wire that's running to that outlet. So that means that outlet, what that really means is that outlet, I'll just switch back here for a second. That outlet, the switch is operating half. All right, so it's what they call a split switch receptacle. So half is on the switch, and the other half has power all the time. So generally, unless they say otherwise, that's what that is. Or they might show a symbol like this. So if you're doing like a condo building or something, you might find that, oh, they darkened one in. So that means it's a split switch. But they're showing where the switch is going to very clearly. And so this would be then split unless otherwise dictated. So you can see a lot of information here on these drawings. You also notice here, it says, that's, if you zoomed here, it'd say S3 and S3. Well, that just means it's a three-way switch. So you could basically enter here, turn the light on, and then you could go out this door and turn the light off. You'll find that at the bottom of the stairs, you can turn the light on. At the top of the stairs, you can turn the light off. That would be building code requirements so that people can see where they're walking. They would have to have satisfy those requirements in the electric code and the building code. And so these symbols are basically following these points in the legend when we're talking about weatherproof duplex outlet, hose bib, and so forth, right? So it makes it a little bit easier for you to, if you're not knowing it, you can look them up pretty much. Plumbing symbols. Well, I find in residential construction, which we're really focusing in on here, you look at it, you can tell. Like basically, it's either going to look like this or look like that. WC just means water closet, which basically means toilet. Usually you're not going to see the actual piping layouts, but a plumber, a master plumber, they will do basically a isometric drawing of a pipe layout, right? So they will show it so that they can look at all the elbows, all the connections. There's all sorts of code requirements with regards to venting and distances and fixtures. But in a set of architectural drawings, so if you're a builder or you're a carpenter reviewing the plans, project manager, site super, you're just going to see things like where's the floor drain, rainwater leaders that I talked about earlier, where's the sinks, right? Where's the bathtub, where's the showers, right? Those are the types of things that you're going to see. You're also going to see these construction note references. And so the construction note references, usually, I have seen where they don't have it too. So if that just makes it a little bit harder. Usually if they don't have this, they tend to have more writing on the drawings. This is a great way of reducing the amount of writing on the drawings. But basically you put a number, and then from the number, you can reference the actual construction notes. So you put a number, and like here's a close-up here. I could then reference from that number 3, on the construction notes, and that tells me everything that's kind of in that wall, right? So everything that's kind of in that wall. So a lot of times they may not give you a detail. They may just give you a reference, and then you got to say, okay, well, we're using brick veneer. That's the hatching for brick veneer, those slash lines. It doesn't show you the airspace, but you know, if you're in construction, it'll also say in the drawings, follow all code requirements. Like for us, it might say Ontario Building Code. For you, it might say basically your state building code, or whatever, you know, country you're in, whatever that building code is. That's the architect's way of saying you got to do this according to our codes. And so we've got the brick, and then basically, so in this case, the builder might use different thicknesses of bricks, so how you lay this out on top of the wall could be a factor, and we'll look at more of that in the next video, which will look at detailed drawings, cut-throughs of the wall. It's talking about the airspace. We have to put the airspace. It's talking about basically brick ties, tying the brick to the actual wall, and metal ties, and how often and frequently they have to be placed. So it's telling us all the information. It's pretty much, in this case, what I really like about how this designer's done it is they've started from the outside and they're working their way through it to the inside. And then they're adding other things like weep holes. Weep holes are little vent holes that's left at the bottom so that air can get into that airspace and dry any moisture that might get out. Big building science principle is like, there's no such thing as any perfect barrier. You're never going to perfectly seal the outside. So the better the system is at being able to dry itself out, the less problems you have. So brick veneer is a really good system in that there is this airspace. We have a weather barrier on the inside side of the airspace. And if any moisture gets in, it can get out or it'll dry out. So it's kind of the points that I wanted to cover with abbreviation symbols, but you should take a look at your drawings, whatever your area you're in. Or as I said, I do have, I'll leave a link for my textbook. I have 3 sets of drawings, full sets of drawings that come with it that you can look at, you can review and get ideas. And then I've got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions in the book, which helps get you better, because you really got to practice this stuff. Really got to practice it. And as I've said in previous videos, try to visualize what it is that you're looking at. Like really try to visualize it and understand it. And as we live in the world of AI, and we live in the world of being able to quickly pull up images, if it says something and you don't know, ask, prompt it. And then don't trust that it's 100% right. Keep prompting it that it makes sense to you. Ask for the source, look at the source, etc. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I'm Tom Stephenson, hoping you have a wonderful day. It really helps if you subscribe to the channel. It really helps if you subscribe and leave a comment, thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.